Hello, grade 7. Mrs. Lopez here. We are working on lesson 13 in module 2, lesson 13. We are actually converting between fractions and decimals today using equivalent fractions. This is probably a review for some of you. For some of you, it's something new. Uh, First of all, we will go and dive into grade 5. I believe that's when they learn the place value. If not earlier, actually. So we have a decimal point right here. We are not going to fill anything here. What is the first place value that comes before the decimal? That's ones. After that, we have tens. And after that, we have hundreds. What comes after the decimal? The first place value after the decimal is actually tenths. We don't have ones anymore. It starts with the tenths. It means we are taking our whole and dividing it into 10 parts, and each of those parts represent tenth. So it's 10 THS, tenths. Then we have hundreds, 100 THS. Then thousands, then we will have 10,000s, and last one here, but again, it always continues, it doesn't stop. It's 100,000s. Hundred thousands. Okay, so if you don't remember your place values, I would highly recommend you to review them because we will be working a lot with them. If not in grade 7, then in grade 8 for sure. So we need those values memorized. We need to know where each digit is located and what its place value is. So today we are going to use the place values to write terminating decimals as equivalent fractions. Well, first of all, what is the terminating decimal? Terminating decimal is the decimal that ends. So for example, if I have 2 and 5 tenths, I can only have zeros after that 5. And I can put as many zeros as I want, but they won't matter because the 5 is the last digit, and that's it. We have 5 tenths. We can have 50 hundredths. We can have 500 thousandths, but it will not really matter. What it matters is the last digit after the decimal. Those are terminating decimals. We can have 2 and 134 thousandths, but that will stop our decimal. We will not continue anymore. Those are repeated decimals, terminating decimals, sorry. So what is the value of the number 2.5? We hear a lot in school when the students say 2.5, but what is its value? 2 stands in the ones place, then we have our decimal point, and then we have 5. So we can write it as 2 and 5 tenths. 2 and 5 tenths. How can I write it as a fraction? 2 and 5 tenths. So I have a 2 and 5 out of 10. 2 and 5 tenths. Okay? Let's go ahead and simplify it. So we have 2 and 5 tenths, but I know I can divide 5 and 10 by the same number, which is 5. I can divide 5 by 5 and 10 by 5, and I will end up as 2 and 1 half. All right, let's write the value of the number 2.25. 2.25 is something that we hear all the time, but what is its value? This is ones, this is tenths, this is hundredths. So 2 and 25 hundredths. 2 and 25 hundredths. Now we can write it as a fraction or a mixed number. We have 2 as a whole number, and then we have 25 out of 100. 2 and 25 hundredths. And we can simplify that. So we have 2 and 25 hundredths, and we can divide both numbers by 25. Because I know I can divide 25 by itself, and I know that I can divide 100 by 25. So that will be 2 and 1/4. Moving on to the next one. Now we are given 4 decimal numbers. We need to write them as fraction in simplest form. So right now I have 218 thousandths. So I write it as a fraction as 218 over 1000. And I can divide, if I don't know if I can divide by anything at all, I can at least look and see if the two numbers are even. If they're even, they can be divided by 2. So I will divide 218 and 1000 by 2 and see what happens. So 218 divided by 2 is 109, and 1000 divided by 2 is 500. I don't think I can simplify it anymore, so I will just leave it as it is. It'll be a very small fraction out of 500 pieces. We are taking 109, but that's what it is. We cannot simplify it anymore. Let's look at B. We have 5 and then decimal point and 1/6. So we know 5 is the whole number, and 16 hundredths is what I have here. 16 hundredths is written as 16 over 100. I can now simplify 16 and 100 by 4. And I will get 5 and 4 25th. And that's where I stop. Let's look at 2 and 72 hundredths. 2 and 72 hundredths. 72 over 100. I can, if I don't see it right away, I can divide both numbers by 2. And I will get 2 and 36 50th. But now I notice that I have two numbers that are even. It means I can continue dividing. I can divide 36 and 50 by 2 again. And I will get 2 and 18 25th. Now it looks like it's all done, and I can't divide anymore. All right, so now problem D, we have 5 and 30 before it. So we have tens, hundred, thousands, 10,000s. We get 5 10,000s. 5 10,000s. And if I divide both numbers by 5, I will get 1 2,500ths. That's it. Now we are going to do the opposite. We are going to convert fractions to decimals. So what are decimals? Decimals are whole numbers that have a fractional part that is separated from that whole number by the decimal point. So that's what we are going to write. Decimals are whole numbers and fractional numbers, and fractional with a fractional part, separated by the decimal point. by the decimal point. Use the meaning of decimal to relate decimal place values. So we can say the fractional part, the denominator in the fractional part is a multiple of 10. The denominator in the fractional part is a multiple of 10. So if I have tens or hundreds or thousands or 10,000s, it's all multiplied by 10 all the time, right? So multiples of 10. Okay, so how can I write 300s as a decimal? If I remember the place value, I know that the hundreds is the second spot after the decimal. So I need to have my 3 in the second spot after the decimal. So I have 0 as a whole number, and I have 3 in the second spot after the decimal. So what goes in the first spot? It's a 0. There is nothing in the first spot. So we will just be covering it up with a 0. So 300s. Okay, I'm going to make it larger here. Okay, moving on to the next one. Okay, that's another one that we cannot see. And that is 3/20ths that I need to convert to a decimal. So I have 3/20ths. And I will rewrite it here, 3/20ths. I need to have a multiple of 10 for the decimal. So 20th is not convenient for me to use because that is not a multiple of 10. I need to have tens or hundreds or thousands. The first number that will exceed that 20th is hundreds. And I'm going to multiply 20 by 5 to make 100. So I need to make equivalent fraction that is going to be also that will have the same value as the 3/20ths. If I multiply 20 by 5 to make 100, I also need to multiply 3 by 5 to make 15. So now I get 1500s. 1500s means that I have to have 5 in the hundreds place. So 1 will have to be in the tens place. So I will have 0 as a whole number, and then 1500s. A common mistake that people make is when they write 1500s, they will say, well, 15 has to be in the hundreds place, so I'm going to put 0 here and 15 in the hundreds place. But now how many digits do I have after the decimal? I have 3. So that means 5 is in the thousands spot, makes it 15,000s, which is not what we want. We want to have 1500s, and that's how it's going to be written. Okay. E, write 10/25ths as a decimal. So again, 10/25ths is not convenient for us. We want to have a multiple of 10 in the denominator. The first number that will exceed 25 is going to be 100. And if I multiply 25 by 4, I get 100. I will also need to multiply 10 by 4 to get 40. And I will get 40 hundreds. 40 hundreds means that 0 in the 40 has to be in the hundreds place. So it will be 0 whole number and then 40 in the hundreds place. I know that the 0 after the decimal doesn't count, so I can just eliminate that and it will be 4 tenths. My question is, can I make 4 tenths without making hundreds? Can I, instead of going up, go down and simplify 10/25th? I can. Here's another way to do it. 10/25th, and instead of multiplying it, I'm going to simplify it. And I'm going to divide both of these numbers by 5. and I will get 2/5. Now, 5 again is not a multiple of 10, but now I can make tenths by multiplying 5 by 2 and 2 by 2. That's how I get 4/10, and that is how I get 4/10 in the decimal form. So a couple of ways of doing it. We can simplify, or we can multiply to make a multiple of 10 in the denominator. All right, let's look at 1/2 as a decimal. 1/2. Again, half we don't need. We need a multiple of 10. So we are going to multiply 2 by 5, and we are going to make 10. And whatever we would do with the denominator, the same we will do with the numerator. Multiply 1 by 5, and we'll get 5. I get 5/10. 5 needs to be in the tenths place. I have 0 as a whole number, decimal point, and 5 in the tenths place. Okay, now I have 7/5, and I need to write it as a decimal. Notice that 7/5 is an improper fraction, so I actually want to change it into a mixed number, not to worry about these guys right here. So I will have 1 and 2/5. 1 and 2/5 is exactly the same as 7/5 because 5 goes into 7 once and 2/5 are remaining. So I'm going to change that 2/5 into a fraction with a denominator of a multiple of 10. So I'm going to multiply 5 by 2, and I will get 10. I will multiply 2 by 2, and I will get 4. And I have still one whole number. So how can I write it as a decimal? I have one whole now, so I don't need to put a 0. I have one whole. Then I will put a decimal point, and I have 4/10 written as 4 in the first place after the decimal. Okay, so points to remember here. Any terminating decimal, and terminating is the decimal that ends, can be converted to a fraction using place value. Every single one. And a fraction whose denominator includes only factors of 2 and 5 can be converted to a decimal by writing the denominator as a power of 10. What does that mean? So if you look at every single denominator that we worked with, it has, let's look at this one, 20 can be made out of 2 and out of 5, right? 25 can be made out of 5. 2 can be made out of 2. And 5 can be made out of 5. So every single denominator that can be made out of 2 or 5 can be used to make a multiple of 10 and used a equivalent fraction to make a decimal. This is your homework. We are changing decimals into fractions in the simplest form and fraction into decimal. Good luck to you, and I will see you in class.